Good morning, and thanks for joining us today. I'm Carlos Phillips, President and CEO of the Greenville Chamber of Commerce. We host these Community Matters discussions every week to connect you with local, state, and national leaders. You can find past recordings as well as the upcoming Community Matters schedule at greenvillechamber.org. A couple of housekeeping items before we get into today's show. All attendees should be on mute with your cameras turned off. And submit questions through the chat feature. We have a lot to talk about today, but if there's time at the end, we do want this to be an interactive discussion. Now on with the show. This morning, we're joined by Nicole Wood, Greenville County Assistant County Administrator, Meredith Papaparis, Greenville County Grants and Special Projects Director, and Joe Cornell, our County Administrator. And they're going to walk us through the Greenville County CARES Act funds that are currently available. Nicole, Meredith, and Joe, welcome to today's Community Matters.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. We are really excited to be here, Carlos, so thank you for having us and talk about our CARES grants and tell you a little bit about the CARES funds that came to Greenville County. So Greenville County is very unique. We're the only county in the state to receive direct funding from CARES, and that's because we have a population of over 500,000 citizens. So Greenville County was entrusted with $91 million to spend in a matter of about 6 short months. So, you know, we worked on a plan and presented it to council, and council approved that plan in June of this year, which directed $75 million to be spent on Greenville small business and nonprofits. So we know that the small business community is really the backbone of our economic mobility here in Greenville, and also our nonprofits that support those citizens, and especially those that have been hit hard by COVID. So we set up and partnered with a software program to create a grant process that's a reimbursement grant that we will talk about today and walk through that application. And then, yeah, so you can see here, so of the 75 million, we set aside 5 million for minorities, 70 million for nonprofits and small businesses. And small businesses classified as having under 50 employees with a brick and mortar location, but that also could be home-based businesses. It's just not e-commerce. So you need to have 50 employees or less. We ask you to verify that on our application through either a W-3 or a 941 or payroll reports. And you need to have been in business since September of last year. So these are expenses, as I mentioned before, that are reimbursement for COVID-related unbudgeted expenses. So these were not in your budget for this year. They were unbudgeted, but they are COVID related. So it could be things like teleworking, if you needed to purchase laptops because your employees are now working from home. Or if you're a restaurant or retail and were ordered to close and you still had to pay rent and utilities on your business, we will reimburse those expenses. There's a number of other things that we will reimburse that we'll talk about in a little bit. But if you have between 1 and 5 employees, you're eligible for up to $5,000. And if you have between 6 and 50, you're eligible for up to $10,000. Again, it's not a guarantee that you'll get the $5,000, but you need to have those receipts to prove that you've spent that amount of money. And then it's all, you probably saw it, I hope you saw it for a good month in July, that we advertised on radio and billboards and through social about the Greenville County CARES, but all of the information can be found on our website. It's front and center as soon as you open the page. And then again, through our social, we're trying to talk to groups like the Greenville Chamber and other chambers and the Nonprofit Alliance to get the word out so people know that the money is available. And we really are working hard to get that money out on the street. So application, Nicole? Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so Nicole, if you gave me $75 million, I think I could personally spend that within the next 6 months.
Me too.
So I'm hoping that our small businesses and not-for-profits can do the same. What's been the activity level so far with the Greenville County CARES Act initiative?
So right now we've had 832 applications that have been submitted. So about 2,700 folks have started an application, but we found a lot of those could be also duplicates or people just kind of wanting to see what it is and then restarting an application later. But 832 have been submitted. Of those, 500 businesses have been paid to date. So 832 submitted, 500 have been paid, 115 businesses have been denied for one reason or another, and 200 are in review. And the nice thing that, you're looking at part of the team here that's doing a lot of the behind the scenes work, but we also have 4 banking partners that are helping us review applications: Synovus Bank, Bank of Travelers Rest, Southern First, and Community Works. And so in addition to about 20 county staff, we're really working with the folks that are in the application process and trying to get those applications approved, and if they are submitted, answer any questions, or if they're in process, how to get things happening a little bit faster.
Good. So it's great that 27 apps have been started, over 800 have been submitted, and 500 have been paid. My thinking is we probably thought we'd be further along right now.
Yeah, we did, for sure. I mean, it started in the beginning of July, and when the grant application opened, and it opened first for folks that had not received PPP or.
Excuse me?
Did she put a picture for the wall out there?
Oh. It started at first for folks that had not received PPP or EIDL or an SBA loan. And so they started to trickle in, and then it opened up 2 weeks later for anyone that, even if you had received PPP or another SBA or other kind of loan. And yes, we did expect applications just to flow in, because we know that there's over 12,000 small businesses in Greenville County. And that's what we kind of based our numbers and our funding on when we made the recommendation to council to set aside such a large fund. And so I think, Meredith and Joe and others here, we've talked to folks, and I think there's some confusion that they think they don't, this doesn't apply to them, or they're not, because they received PPP. And so this is, something the same as, or they're going to have to pay it back. This is a grant. This is a reimbursement grant. So you do not have to pay this back, even if you did get PPP or EIDL. However, the big thing is you need to have spent the money on COVID-related expenses. And
Good.
Once you submit those receipts and you'll get paid.
Yeah, I want to thank, thanks for that, Nicole. I want to thank County Council for allocating or designating $75 million in this fund for small, minority, women-owned businesses and not-for-profits as well. I can't thank them enough for their leadership there. That's pretty significant. And just some early advice for any small business or not-for-profit that's listening. I would encourage you to apply and be told you're not eligible versus assuming that you're not eligible and not applying. Would that be pretty sound advice? Very sound, yes. And if they have any questions, we'll talk about how to get in touch with us, but please, definitely apply. And we really try to hold folks' hands through the process. And if they don't have the right documentation, or if they have questions, we reach out and send emails and make phone calls to say, what is needed, or clarify any questions they may have. So yes, please apply. Just don't apply. If you receive funding, don't apply again. That's the only thing. Right. We're only funding, folks, one time. Well, I learned something interesting a couple of days ago, and that is there was a survey taken recently, and half of the survey indicated that half of the businesses that received PPP funding already need more funding. So even if you've already received PPP, chances are you still need more funding. All the more reason to apply for the Greenville County CARES Act funds.
Absolutely.
All right. So earlier you listed some criteria for businesses to qualify for the Greenville County CARES Act funding initiative. So let's just say your business does fit the criteria that you communicated. How do businesses apply?
Okay, so businesses apply through the website. And so again, front and center on the website, you have to go through an eligibility checklist. And that will tell you, you're asking if you've been in business since September, if you have COVID-related expenses, if you have 50 employees or less. And then it walks you through the application. If you're able to answer yes to all of those, or no, depending on what the question is or how it's phrased, then you can move on to the application. And Meredith will walk through the application.
Yeah, so what you can see right now, Nicole referenced before, we partnered with a software company, Neighborly, to really build out a platform that we felt like was very user-friendly. The applicants could move through it pretty quickly. You can start it, save it, come back to it. So we really feel like it is something that is pretty easily to navigate. So on there, step-by-step, as Nicole mentioned, what we're seeing is people that are, when we talk about the progress number being 2,700, that eligibility step is the very first thing that you get to, and it's a series of yes/no questions, and it's really there to help screen if you are or are not eligible. So Carlos, you said apply to find out if you are. That is absolutely true. The application will pretty much tell you yes or no in the very first step. So you may not move forward, but if you do, you'll move on to the next step. Contact information, very straightforward. Just you as the applicant, most likely it's an owner. We have seen some CPAs and other folks helping people, but just basic contact information. Business information is just about your business. Some of the big things to note in that category is we would obviously need your employee identification number. It's going to ask you the year that your business is established. Again, continuing to help validate that you are in fact eligible, and just giving us information as reviewers to make sure we can check off all those boxes in our checklist. Once you move through that part, you go to your funding request. This is probably the most important of the portion of the grant application. Then we'll talk a little bit more about expenses, but when you go to the funding request, you're going to identify how much you're requesting. And again, that's based on your number of employees. So if you have 1 to 5, it's up to 5,000. We hope people ask for the full amount. We really want to give away as much as we can. So ask for it. We'll help you get there. If you put less than, we're usually calling you saying, hey, no, you can get $5,000 or $10,000. So let us help you get that. But again, outlining what is your request. So how has your business been impacted? What are some of those things that you felt during the period of COVID? And then into required documentation. We're going to call out that on another slide in just a second, because that's something that tends to be a pretty big sticking point for folks. And also hopefully proactively giving you guys some information on what you might need before you apply. But once you get everything, as far as the required documentation, you upload it into the application and you click submit. We've had a few questions of how do I sign this, or do I need to sign it? Submitting it is your electronic signature. So you click submit, it comes into our queue, we assign it right away, and then the review process begins.
So Meredith, it appears that I'm going to assume that most businesses, most of the apps that have not been completed, they get stuck at step 5. Is that right?
Honestly, no. Most people we see get stuck at either step 4 or at 1, where they say, oh, okay, well, on our eligibility checklist, you've heard people mention brick and mortar. Does that qualify my home-based business? So things that are screening from the eligibility stage, it honestly pauses more early in the application than even getting to the required documents. But there are several that are hanging out there because of required documents. That is true.
Okay. But how long typically does this process take, or should it take? If a business, if they have all the information that they need, about how long should it take a business to complete the application? Well, just to complete the application, yeah.
Like 30 minutes to an hour. If you have everything together, tops. I mean, I think too, again, as you can see, the required documentation, a lot of businesses that had to apply for any other kind of loan tend to have these documents already in hand or can work or access them pretty quickly. So it really is, to your point, Carlos, having these already ready would help expedite your application process very much. So we'll talk really quickly if you want to go ahead and look at those required documentations we need. And again, we'll make a mention here that for nonprofits that are on the call, this will vary. The application itself doesn't, but the required documents that you'll need to provide for us will. Obviously, some of those, like your 990 and things like that, will substitute for some of the things we'll talk about for the businesses. But for small businesses, we just need your driver's license or a state-issued ID, a W-3, or a copy of a 941 for like the first quarter specifically, to show us, again, how many employees you have. We have to verify that somehow. We know there are several businesses that have high turnover or may not actually employ 50 at one time. It can fluctuate month to month. We're working with all of those businesses to help kind of capture what does it really look like monthly for you to help move along and not get stuck on that side. And then
is that employee number? Would that be like your average number of employees for the year? Is that how that's calculated?
It's the amount of W-2s that you produce that year. So your W-3 just summarizes it's full and part-time. So it's how many people you paid in 2019 is the number that we're looking at, which is why like restaurants, we've seen home health care that's become an issue where you have more on your W-3 but may have only had 40 on your payroll in the months of January, February, March.
Because of turnover and other things. So we're trying to keep it, and payroll reports as well. We're really trying to work, again, we really see it with the restaurants.
Mostly,
because of high turnover.
Yeah. And then your W-9, we just need that to verify your business with your EIN, your address, and the business owner. Business personal property tax is another thing that has been a point of confusion for people. It's referring to anything you pay taxes on in your office establishment. So furniture, equipment, technology. This is not something that is required to complete your application. And we'll talk through it with folks. We would like for them to provide some kind of personal property tax receipt. But again, it's not going to disqualify you if you don't have it. Because that doesn't really pertain to some folks that work out of their home or in other instances. So business license, this is only applicable if you're in a municipality. So within city limits, you're required to have a business license. If you're outside of that, somewhere in the county, and you don't have that, you don't have to provide. And IRS business schedules, this is just talking to those sole proprietors. Again, you may not have a W-3 or any of that tax documentation, but we need something, again, to verify your business and provide information on how many people are a part of the partnership and how many have ownership in the company. And then lastly, and we'll speak to this in more detail, the proof of payment for your eligible expenses. Again, proof of payment can mean a lot of things. We can look at invoices that show that you've paid the invoice. We really like to have a paid receipt, whether it's a copy of the receipt, canceled check. You can supply a bank statement. We've been steering clear of that a little bit because when you get a 20-page document and just are supposed to guess which line item, it becomes a little bit difficult on the reviewer side. But if you can highlight and call out what it's associated to, we can work with that as well. But again, after March 27th of 2020, and it's COVID related. So if you want to, we can pause there or just go ahead and move into the eligible expenses so we can speak to more detail, and I'll let Nicole cover what these are because I know this is a big point of confusion for people.
Okay.
So as Meredith mentioned, again, we've talked about it a lot, reimbursement only, and I know that is a sticking point for some folks, but because we have to the Greenville County is ultimately responsible for this $91 million, and we will, have to put this on our audit. We need to make sure that the expenses are the money's going towards COVID-related expenses. So as Meredith mentioned, March 27th, that's a big date. The receipts have to be dated after that date, COVID-related and unbudgeted, and then verifiable by paid receipt. Some examples. So I mentioned earlier, if your business was forced to close, or you closed your door during the work or stay home order, and you still have to pay your mortgage or lease on that building, those lease payments are eligible for reimbursement. So this is a really, we've seen a lot of hair salons, nail salons, restaurants, barber shops. This is an easy one for those folks. If they had to pay booth rental, or if you own the salon, the rent on that salon for those April, May, June, July, August, that can get you to $5,000 or $10,000 pretty quickly. Utilities for that building as well. So again, paid Duke Energy or Piedmont Natural Gas, those types of bills can get paid. Inventory, PPE is an easy one. A lot of folks in business had to buy masks and gloves. We see that with a lot of especially the restaurants and the home-based health businesses, gowns, that sort of thing. Building modifications. If you had to change your office and do, add some cubicles for space to separate folks, or if you had to get some outdoor furniture or put a drive-through window into your for your restaurant so people could pick up to-go orders, those types of changes and building modifications could be eligible. And again, that's where it's important to write on the application when you're asking for your part of funding request. If you are turning in a bunch of Home Depot or receipts from a contractor, explain what you did and what it was used for. COVID-related training, if you had to bring someone in to train your employees on safe protocols and procedures, that training. We've seen a lot of Zoom licenses and other sorts of things that are helping people be socially distant and still continue working. So yeah, operational process, including the technology and equipment, those are also eligible. Do you have questions about that?
I don't, but we do have some questions that are populating in the chat. So we're going to get to some of those. What happens to any of the remaining funds? Will these funds carry over to another initiative or anything like that? What will happen to those?
Carlos, this is Joe. The funds that aren't expended in this part of the program would probably be moved to other segments within the program. We have the community health piece, we have help for municipalities, for special purpose districts. So I would think we'll start looking at where they're being used now and then project out where we think they'll end up and then start reallocating some of these fundings within the program itself.
Got it. Thank you, Joe. Another question, might the funding criteria be modified if we find that we're just not exhausting all of the complete fund?
I could see us, if there are issues out there with the small businesses where they feel like they just can't get that information or it's too onerous on them to provide the information, we'll take a look at it. I can't guarantee that we'll make changes, because at the end of the day, as Nicole mentioned, we are responsible for the expenditure of these funds. In other words, if we allocate a grant or give a grant to a small business and throughout some audit process, it's determined that that is not legitimate use of the funds, they're not going to go after the small business. They're coming after the county. So we have to make sure whatever we do will protect the county as well as small business.
Right. All right. Thanks for that, Joe. Question from the chat. So these grants are not to replace lost income due to the virus, just to reimburse direct expenses caused by the virus. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's big. So yes, this is not we cannot replace revenue. This is not a revenue replacement grant, nor is this going for payroll for folks. So we're not reimbursing for payroll, and we're not reimbursing for lost revenue. And that's, again, we understand that that's been very difficult for a lot of small business and nonprofits, but right now it's just to replace the cost that you had to spend due to COVID for those expenses.
Good, thank you. So a term that I learned in my early professional career, I had my employer was encouraging folks to participate in a 401k plan, which had a company match. And the employer said, okay, you're going to put in X%, and the company is going to match that. And they said, don't leave found money on the sidewalk. So basically, this is a gift. We're going to give you a gift here. Don't pass it up. And I wouldn't say that this is a gift to small businesses and not-for-profits in the area, but it is certainly assistance that most businesses need right now. How can we help spread the word about this initiative? I know you've done some advertising, some marketing, billboards, radio, and what have you, but based on current activity, we still got to find more ways to spread the word. What do you think we can do?
Absolutely. And by hosting us today is a huge help. So thank you so much for having us. But look on our website, and it lists every business and nonprofit that has received a grant. And so if you're questioning whether or not you should apply, or do you know somebody, that lists all the organizations that have received money to date. And so, talk to folks, talk to your fellow coworkers, or if you have an industry group. I mean, again, Meredith, Joe, and I would be happy to talk to whoever and explain the program. We're going to do another round of advertising again soon, but there is some, people get confused between this grant. Meredith and I walked the streets of downtown last week handing out postcards to small businesses, and almost all of them that we went into, they hadn't applied, and they were confused between our program and the city's program. So there is some confusion out there, I think, unfortunately. So, whatever we can do for folks to get, yes, there's the list of, in alphabetical order, of the grant recipients and the funding. But so you'll see all sorts of different types of companies and businesses on there. So yeah. I know, and it just goes on and on and on. It's, we say 500 and it sounds like, it's only 500 out of 10,000 possible, but there's a lot of folks that have, gone through this process. And I think more often than not, if you have those documents, as Meredith, had outlined, and you turn your application in with those receipts, some people are seeing a check in their mailbox within a week. So we're trying to get, folks, this process, make it simple for folks and get them through it quickly. But spread the word. We're going to do our part by getting, the word out as much as we can for social, as well as, during other different types of processes and broadcasts. So whatever ideas. Yeah.
And just reach out to us.
Yeah.
I mean, questions. I can't reiterate. You said it perfectly. Don't assume you're not eligible. Just reach out, share the email address. We're responding as quickly as possible. Email is the best way to communicate, and then share the link. Because again, we'll walk you through the process. We want to help as much as possible. So don't just assume you are not eligible.
Good. A question from the chat. So if you're missing receipts that should have been in your first request, can you reapply for another grant?
At this time, you cannot reapply for another grant. Now, if you were denied, and you for whatever reason, you can reapply. And again, if you were denied, please reach out to us and we can talk to you about why you were denied and then what could possibly be eligible. But at this time, we are not allowing folks to reapply for additional funds.
Okay. All right. When I was, thank you. When I was going through the list, I saw that there were businesses with that received less than 5,000 or less than 10,000. So my initial understanding was that the grant would be for either 5,000 or for 10,000, depending on your employee count, but that's not the case. I just wanted some clarity on that.
No, that's not the case. You will be reimbursed. Your grant will be for the amount of that you have expended. So again, if you have more than 10,000, submit those receipts and you will get $10,000. But if you only have, I mean, some folks, as Meredith said, we'll reach back out and, do you have another lease payment? Do you have other expenses if you are coming in short? But some people have applied for $1,400 or $1,470 was one yesterday, and they got $1,470 because that's all the COVID related expenses that they had. So it's not a guarantee of 5 or 10, but we really are hoping people will go after those amounts.
Got it. A lot of businesses and particularly not-for-profits have stated that PPE is not where they need the most assistance right now. Particularly not-for-profits in particular are saying, we've been unable to secure sponsorship revenue. We've been unable to hold in-person events and what have you. That's where we're really hurting right now. And this grant does not address that. What do you say for those organizations?
Well, unfortunately, the Treasury doesn't not allow us to use these funds for revenue replacement. It's not a county decision. That's a Treasury decision.
Got it. So those businesses, if they've not already done so, should they apply for the federal CARES Act provisions, or what should they do?
I would think that would be the smart thing to do. It's kind of interesting, Carlos, with this, with the number of businesses that have started applications and submitted them. It's not just happening here. We've talked to entities or counties across the country that have had the same situation with their program, where it's just, I think it may be somewhat of a CARES Act grant fatigue, where they've been through it with the PPP and now they're looking at other things. And then the city came out with their much smaller grant program. And I think it's some confusion and just some fatigue. They're trying to stay in business, stay open, and it's just hard for them to be distracted with these other things. So hopefully, with our advertising, with what you all do, with contacting the members and everything of the chamber, we can get more people interested in applying, because we'll turn around quick. We want this money to go out the door. We don't want to leave it land on the sidewalk, as you described. We will reallocate, and there's other uses that we can find for it very quickly with the hospitals and other healthcare providers. But initially, we feel it's very, very important that we support the small businesses throughout the county and do what we can to help them recover. So we'll keep pushing, but we need help.
All right, and we're going to try to do everything we can to help spread the word about this program and those funds that are available. If we could go back to the eligible expense slide, I don't know if we can or not, but I have a question about rents. And I thought I heard you say that rent is an eligible, a reimbursable expense, but we have a question in the chat to confirm that.
Yes, rent is an eligible expense. Now, if you're a home-based business, we will not pay mortgage. But if you are now working from home because your office and you shut down your business, and you're paying a lease or mortgage on a storefront location, that is eligible for reimbursement. And so that's a way that, again, that was a change, when we talked originally about changing eligibility and required documents and different things. Rent at first wasn't on the list for an eligible expense, but we soon found, and we were able to, County Council enabled us to be nimble. And so we realized that, that's a definite expense a lot of businesses had, and they still have to pay their rent or their mortgage, even if they were told to shut down. So we're glad to be able to help with that.
Good, thank you. Nicole, Meredith, and Joe, what have we not discussed? What have we not covered that you think is important for our attendees and businesses and nonprofits throughout Greenville County to know about this program?
I mean, I really just think y'all have done a great job helping highlight what is important, but people just need to get out there and apply. I mean, I think that if you take away anything, hopefully it's that you don't need to assume you're not eligible, and you need to go online. It's pretty easy, walk through the process. We're going to hopefully share after this call a checklist that will be a little bit more proactive for folks to get everything together before you go in. So that way, once you're sitting down, starting the process, you have it all nice and ready in a package, and you can just knock it out. Our turnaround is as quick as we can, and your funds will be at your door hopefully within 10 business days.
Good. Is there an opportunity to perhaps, there seems to be almost 2,000 businesses who have started the application but have not completed. Is there a way to go back to connect with those 2,000 businesses to say, hey, notice that you haven't completed the application? Is there a way that we can assist you or anything like that? Is there a follow-up for those businesses?
Yes, and we've reached out through the system in that way. And again, just to kind of reiterate, I would say probably 25% of that is duplicate or a mess up, or they did a test to print the application. So close to it, but yes, we're hopefully following up with and reaching out to those folks to make sure we can help answer any questions that may have held them up in the process.
Good, thank you. Well, if I just do my old Kentucky math, if we have just over 30,000 businesses in Greenville County, then the math says that 90% have not applied for these funds. So we've got our work cut out for us, and I hope we can find a way to spread the word throughout the community that this opportunity exists. One of the things that we like to do on this Community Matters platform is we like to offer messages of hope, if you are, words of hope for our attendees and for our community as we continue to navigate this pandemic. And my message is pretty constant, has been pretty constant throughout the almost 30 episodes of this Community Matters that we've done. And that message is we have certainly gone through some tough times. For most people, probably the most challenging time that they've ever endured. But things are getting better, and we're going to get through this together, and we'll come out stronger on the other side. If you had a message of hope, what would that message be?
Well, for me, it would be the Greenville County cares. I mean, truly, we care about the small business. We care about the folks that are trying to get assistance. And so you see that email that was flashed out there. That email is Meredith and I, and we will walk folks through to get them, again, some help that's needed so very much right now. So we're out there, we're trying to support not only our business community, but the nonprofits and our health organizations. So, if you are struggling and you need some guidance, please reach out to us. And we hope we can get you the help that you need.
All right, Meredith?
I think I would just echo Nicole. We're here to help. Like you said, we're in this together. So we are obviously, fortunate to be receiving this money. And as Greenville County, we feel very obligated to help as many people as we can. And so that's really our role, is to make sure that we can help as many businesses as possible, including nonprofits, and really just working together to get you guys that 5,000 and 10,000. Let us get you there. But we are here to help and answer any questions. We don't want this to be difficult, nor do we want to add stress. We understand what people are going through, and we just want to be hopefully hopeful for them, and make their situations as better as possible. So we're here to help. That would be what I would put in there.
Thank you, Meredith and Joe. The attendees are at the edge of their seats waiting on your message of hope.
Well, I agree with what's been said, but also we've gotten a number of emails back from people that have received some of the grant funding and basically thanking, but more importantly, explaining that this has really helped get them over the hump. While it's not a lot of money at one time, it's enough to get them over that hump. So hopefully more of the businesses will apply and try, because we'll do whatever we can to help them. I think we'll get through it. Like you said, we're on the backside of it, hopefully. And we just got to keep pushing.
Good. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for being on today's show, Nicole, Meredith, and Joe. I think you provided some valuable information that's going to help businesses apply for these much needed funds. And hopefully we can exhaust that full $75 million. If not, I'll come knocking. I've got a couple ideas on how we can spend that. But thank you all for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Today's recording, let me go back. I want to thank the attendees for joining us today as well. There's no Community Matters without you. So I want to thank you for attending today's show. Today's recording will be shared on the Greenville Chamber's website and sent to attendees, along with a survey and a link to the Greenville County CARES Act application page. Please complete that survey. It does inform our decision and our programming. So thank you in advance for completing that survey. We take time at the end of every call to remind everyone, please do your part in helping to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Remember, mask, wash, and distance. It's that simple. And we still need more people doing that. So please do those things, especially with the Labor Day weekend coming up. It's going to be important that we are more diligent than ever in practicing safe behaviors so that we don't see a surge or an uptick in our coronavirus cases. So please do that. Let's do our part to take care of our neighbors. I want to encourage everyone to have a great day. Stay positive and test negative.